The conference room smelled like fresh coffee and ambition. 15 executives sat around the mahogany table, their attention fixed on my quarterly projections displayed across 3 wall-mounted screens. I'd been preparing this presentation for 2 weeks, and every number was airtight. As you can see, I said, advancing to the next slide, our projected returns for Q4 exceed initial estimates by roughly... The door opened without a knock. 2 men in dark suits walked in like they owned the building. The shorter one had a badge already in his hand. The taller one was looking directly at me with the kind of expression that told me my presentation was over. Brandon Cole? My boss, Richard Vaughn, stood up. Excuse me, this is a private DEA. The shorter agent flashed his badge at Richard, then turned back to me. Mr. Cole, you're under arrest for possession with intent to distribute a Schedule II controlled substance. The room went silent. Not the normal kind of silent, the kind where you can hear the air conditioning and someone's watch ticking 3 seats away. There must be some mistake, I heard myself say, but I was already watching the taller agent move toward me, handcuffs catching the fluorescent light. Hands behind your back, sir. Wait, can we at least do this outside, in private? The shorter agent shook his head. Sir, we have a warrant. We're not negotiating. I looked at the faces around the table. Richard Vaughn, my boss for 7 years, pale as paper. His mouth was moving, but no sound came out. Sarah from accounting had her hand frozen over her coffee cup, like time had stopped for her alone. Marcus from legal was already mentally drafting the liability assessment. I could see it in his eyes. The new intern, Kevin, I think, with his mouth hanging open like he'd stumbled into the wrong movie. This is a mistake, I said again, louder this time, as if volume would make it true. I don't know what you think you found, but 2 kilograms of cocaine, the taller agent said flatly, hidden in your briefcase, the one you carried into this building 30 minutes ago. 2 kilograms. The number hit me like a physical blow. That wasn't possession. That was trafficking. That was serious federal time. This is ridiculous, I said, but I put my hands behind my back anyway because what else do you do when federal agents are cuffing you in front of your entire professional life? You have the right to remain silent, the shorter agent began, and the words washed over me like noise from a television in another room. They led me past the conference table, past my colleagues who couldn't meet my eyes, past the presentation still glowing on the screens with all my careful projections about a future that had just evaporated. In the hallway, the taller agent held up my briefcase, the leather one Ashley gave me for our 10th anniversary, with my initials embossed in gold on the corner. I remembered the day she gave it to me. She'd cried, told me she was so proud of everything I'd accomplished. 11 years of lies. Every moment I'd thought was real was just another scene in her performance. This yours? Yes. We found 2 kilograms of cocaine in a hidden compartment. I actually laughed. It came out sounding wrong, desperate. That's impossible. I don't even know what cocaine looks like in real life. The agent's expression didn't change. You can tell that to your lawyer. I'm telling you right now, someone planted that. I didn't even know there was a compartment in that briefcase. My wife gave it to me. I stopped mid-sentence. Something in my brain clicked, like a tumbler falling into place in a lock. My wife gave it to me. Sir, we need you to come with us. They marched me through the lobby, past the reception desk where Marlene had wished me good morning 3 hours earlier, past the glass doors, and into the back of an unmarked sedan. The whole time, I kept waiting for someone to say it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, a test of some kind. No one did. Mecklenburg County Jail smelled like industrial cleaner and fear. They took my belt, my watch, my wedding ring. They photographed me from the front and side, pressed my fingers into ink, and assigned me a number like I was inventory being processed into a warehouse. Empty your pockets, the processing officer said. He was a heavy-set man who looked like he'd done this exact routine 10,000 times. They already took everything. Empty them anyway. I turned out my pockets. Nothing. Sign here and here. Initials there. Forms. Endless forms. I signed them without reading, which probably wasn't smart, but my mind was somewhere else entirely, trying to calculate how 2 kilograms of cocaine had appeared in a briefcase I'd owned for 3 years. The booking officer was a tired-looking woman with gray streaks in her hair. She typed my information into her computer without looking at me once. Name? Brandon Michael Cole. Address? I gave her my address. The address of the home I shared with Ashley. Occupation? Senior financial analyst, Whitmore Crane Investments. She paused. Felony drug trafficking, she said, reading from the paperwork. North Carolina GS 9095. That's serious. I didn't do this. She glanced up at me for the first time. Her eyes were the color of dishwater and just as warm. They all say that, sweetheart. I'm not they all. I've never touched drugs in my life. I don't even know what cocaine looks like except from television. Uh-huh. She went back to her typing. Cell block B, arraignment tomorrow morning. Can I make a phone call? 1 call, 5 minutes, phones on the wall. I was allowed 1 phone call. I stood at the wall-mounted phone, receiver pressed to my ear, listening to it ring. Ashley picked up on the 4th ring. Hello? Her voice was careful, neutral, the voice she used when she didn't recognize the number. Ash, it's me, I'm… The words stuck in my throat. How do you tell your wife something like this? I've been arrested. There was a pause. Half a second, maybe less. Then a gasp. What? Brandon, what are you talking about? That half-second delay. I noticed it even then, though I didn't understand what it meant yet. I filed it away in some corner of my mind, the way you file away a number that doesn't quite add up in a spreadsheet. Her gasp had come just a fraction too late to be surprised, like she'd needed a moment to remember the script. They found drugs in my briefcase, cocaine. I don't know how it got there, but they're saying it's trafficking. Oh my God. Her voice trembled perfectly, just the right amount of fear and confusion. Brandon, this is insane. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? I'm fine. Scared, but fine. Listen, I need you to come to the arraignment tomorrow, 9 a.m. at the courthouse, and we need to figure out bail. Of course, honey. I'll be there. We'll figure this out together. We'll get through this. I love you, I said, because that's what you say to your wife when your world is falling apart. I love you too. Be strong, okay? I'm going to make some calls. We'll fix this. She didn't come to the arraignment. I stood in front of Judge Harold Simmons in an orange jumpsuit that smelled like the last 10 men who wore it, while Ashley's absence sat in the gallery like a ghost. Her excuse came via text that morning. Car trouble, waiting for AA. So sorry, baby. Call me after. The prosecutor asked for $500,000 bond. My court-appointed attorney, a kid who looked fresh out of law school, argued it down to $250,000. Can you post that amount? Judge Simmons asked me. My wife… I stopped. My wife wasn't here. I need to make arrangements. Bail is set at $250,000. Next case. I called Ashley from the jail phone that afternoon. I'm trying, she said. But we can't access that much liquid cash, Brandon. Everything's tied up in the house, the retirement accounts. We have over $300,000 in savings, Ashley. That's not liquid. There are penalties, waiting periods. There are no penalties on a savings account. Silence. Then, I'm doing the best I can, okay? This is hard for me too. I spent 3 nights in a cell with a man named Jerome, who was in for aggravated assault. He told me his story, and I believed him, because by that point I was starting to understand that being in jail didn't necessarily mean you were guilty of anything. On the 4th morning, a guard came to my cell. Cole, you made bail. Tyler Reeves was waiting in the release area, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Tyler and I had worked together for 12 years. He'd been the best man at my wedding. He knew me better than anyone except, I thought, my wife. "Don't say anything," he said as I walked out. "Let's just get you home." In the car, I finally asked, "How much did it cost you?" "Enough." "Tyler." He kept his eyes on the road. "I used my retirement fund. It's fine. You can pay me back when this is over." Ashley didn't even try, did she? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I hired William Park 3 days after my release. He came recommended by a lawyer friend of Tyler's, former federal prosecutor, 26 years of experience, known for taking cases that other attorneys called unwinnable. His office was on the 14th floor of a building uptown, all glass walls and leather furniture. He was a compact man in his early 50s, silver at the temples with eyes that missed nothing. When I walked in, he didn't stand up or offer to shake hands, just gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit. Talk. I bill by the hour, so don't waste time with small talk." I liked him immediately. "Tell me everything," he said, sliding a legal pad across the desk. "And I mean everything. Don't leave anything out because you're embarrassed or you think it makes you look bad. I can't defend you if you lie to me." "Where do you want me to start?" "The beginning. How long have you been married? What do you do for work? What's your relationship with your wife actually like, not what you want it to be?" I told him everything. 11 years of marriage, the job I loved, the wife I thought I knew, the arrest, the briefcase, the 2 kilograms that appeared out of nowhere. Ashley's strange reaction on the phone, that half-second delay. The fact that my wife of 11 years hadn't bothered to show up to my arraignment or post my bail. William listened without interrupting. He took notes in a cramped, illegible handwriting that somehow covered 3 pages. When I finished, he set down his pen and opened a folder on his desk. "I've been reviewing the evidence the prosecution shared during discovery. Something doesn't add up." "I know. I didn't do it." "No, I mean something specific doesn't add up. Something about the way this whole thing was constructed." He pulled out a sheet of paper. "The anonymous tip that led to your arrest came in at 6:47 a.m. You arrived at your office at 7 a.m. That's a 13-minute window. So how did the tipster know exactly when you'd arrive? You're a senior analyst. You don't punch a clock. You could have gotten there at 7, 7:15, 7:30. But they knew. They knew which car you'd be driving that day. They knew which parking spot you'd use. They knew you'd have the briefcase with you instead of leaving it in the car." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Someone who knows my routine. Someone who knows your routine intimately. He pulled out another paper, a close-up photograph of the briefcase's interior. The cocaine was hidden in a professional-grade false compartment, the kind of compartment that takes expertise to install and costs real money. "See this seam here? That's custom work. Someone who knew what they were doing built this. I never noticed any compartment. That's the point. It's designed to be invisible unless you know exactly where to look." He tapped the photo. "Your fingerprints are all over the briefcase, which makes sense, since it's your briefcase. But here's the interesting part." He looked up at me, and his expression shifted. Something like satisfaction, or maybe anticipation. "Your fingerprints aren't on the drugs. They're not on the plastic bags. They're not anywhere near the hidden compartment. If you were actually trafficking cocaine, there's no way you'd be that careful about the drugs themselves while leaving prints all over everything else. Which means someone who wanted you caught would have put your prints on the bags. Just press your fingers against the plastic while you're asleep, easy enough. But someone who wanted you convicted, who wanted this to stand up in court, made sure the evidence was clean. Plausible. Just circumstantial enough that a jury might buy it." He leaned back in his chair. "This wasn't a setup to punish you, Mr. Cole. This was a setup to remove you." The cold in my stomach turned to ice. I traced the anonymous tip, William continued, pulling out another document. Burner phone, purchased at a Walmart in Gastonia 3 days before your arrest. Paid cash. Security footage shows a woman matching your wife's general description, but her face was turned away from the camera. Could be coincidence, could be careful planning. But you said they paid cash. For the phone, yes. But they made one mistake. They used a credit card for the $10 activation fee. Small amount, probably didn't think anyone would bother tracking it. But I bother. William slid a credit card statement across the desk. One line was highlighted in yellow. $10.47, paid to Track Phone Wireless. The card belonged to Ashley Marie Cole. I stared at the highlighted line until the numbers blurred. My wife's name? My wife's card. The activation fee for the phone that sent me to jail. That's not, I started. There has to be some explanation. There is an explanation, William said. The explanation is that your wife set you up. The question is whether you're going to accept that explanation or keep looking for reasons it can't be true. I sat in silence. The office felt smaller than it had when I walked in. What do you want to do? William asked. I can defend you against these charges. The evidence is circumstantial, and with what I've found, I think we have a reasonable shot at acquittal. Or we can figure out what really happened. Follow the trail, see where it leads. Find out why your wife would do this and who helped her. And then? William smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Then we make them regret it. I didn't confront her. Every instinct screamed at me to drive home and demand answers, but William's words kept playing in my head. This wasn't a setup to punish you. This was a setup to remove you. If Ashley had done this, my wife, the woman I'd built a life with for 11 years, then she had a plan. And I needed to understand the full scope of that plan before I did anything. So I played the devastated husband. Ashley visited me 3 days after my release. She swept into our house like a concerned spouse, all tears and touching my face and promises to stand by me through this nightmare. I held her and said the right things while my mind cataloged everything I was seeing. New manicure, French tips, which she'd always said were too expensive for maintenance. Fresh highlights, subtle, professional, probably $300 at her usual salon. She'd lost weight, 10 pounds, maybe more. Her cheekbones were sharper, her waist narrower. She looked like a woman preparing for something. I've been so stressed, she said, wiping her eyes with a tissue. I've been staying at my sister's house just to have some support. Ashley doesn't have a sister. She has a brother in Seattle who she talks to twice a year on birthdays. Of course, I said. Whatever you need. She looked at me with something like relief, like she'd expected me to push back and was grateful I hadn't. That night, after she left to go back to her sister's, I called Tyler. I need your help, but I can't tell you why yet. I need you to trust me. What do you need? Follow my wife. Tell me where she actually goes when she leaves here. Tyler was silent for a moment. Then, how long have you suspected? I don't want to suspect anything. I want to know. 3 days later, Tyler called me from his car. She's not staying with any sister. There's a luxury condo in Dilworth, South Davidson Street. Her car's been parked there every night since your arrest. Whose condo? I ran the property records. It's owned by a company called Ashford Development LLC. The principal is a guy named Daniel Ashford, real estate developer. I wrote down the name. What else? He's in trouble. His company's being sued for $4.2 million. Cash-strapped, apparently. Word is he's about to lose everything. That night, I sat in my home office and began to research Daniel Ashford. Social media, business registrations, court records. I built a profile of a man who charmed investors into bad deals and left them holding the bag. And then I found the photo. A charity gala, 14 months ago. Ashley in a blue dress I remembered buying with her. She was laughing at something off camera, her hand on the arm of a man with gray temples and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Daniel Ashford. I'd been traveling for work that week, a conference in Dallas. Ashley had said she'd stay home. I called Tyler. I need you to get me into my company's HR records, quietly. Brandon, that's risky. I know. Can you do it? He sighed. I know someone. What am I looking for? Any contact from my wife. Calls, emails, anything. 2 days later, he called back. His voice was strange, flat, angry, sorry all at once. She called HR 3 weeks before your arrest. Asked about spousal benefits if an employee is terminated for criminal conduct. I closed my eyes. She was planning this. Brandon, I'm sorry. Don't be. Now I know what I'm dealing with. William Park's conference room became my war room. I spent hours there with Tyler and a forensic accountant named Patricia Walsh, a thin woman with steel gray hair and the demeanor of someone who'd seen every financial crime imaginable and wasn't impressed by any of them. Your wife opened an LLC 6 months ago, Patricia said, spreading documents across the table. Southeastern Consulting Group. She's been funneling money from your joint accounts through fake consulting fees. How much? $127,000 so far. She pulled out a ledger. The money went to Daniel Ashford's car payment, his condo association fees, and a $45,000 investment in his company. William whistled low. She's been financing her lover with your money. It gets better, Tyler said. He'd been working his law enforcement contacts for days, and he looked like he hadn't slept. I talked to a friend who works narcotics. The cocaine they found in your briefcase wasn't street-level product. It was cartel-grade, high purity, not the kind of thing you buy from a dealer on a corner. Where does someone get cartel-grade cocaine? Daniel Ashford's cousin, Victor Ashford. He did 6 years for trafficking, got out 18 months ago. He's connected to people who move serious product. The picture was becoming clear now, each piece clicking into place like a puzzle I wished I couldn't solve. Their plan, I said slowly. Frame me for a felony. I go to prison for 3 to 5 years. Ashley stays married to me, keeps access to my retirement accounts, my stock options, the house. Then she files for divorce while I'm inside, claims abandonment, and takes everything. North Carolina's equitable distribution gives a convicted felon spouse nothing. She walks away with approximately $2.5 million, Patricia confirmed. Moves in with Ashford. Uses your money to bail out his failing company. William shook his head. She didn't want a divorce. A divorce would mean splitting assets, lawyers, negotiation. She wanted a disposal, I finished. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Tyler asked the question I'd been dreading. What do you want to do? I looked at the documents spread across the table. The evidence of my wife's betrayal laid out in neat stacks of paper. 11 years of marriage reduced to conspiracy charges and wire transfers. I want to destroy them, I said. Legally, completely, and without mercy. I want to take everything they tried to take from me, and I want them to watch it happen. William smiled for the first time since I'd met him. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Then let's get to work. The next 3 weeks were an exercise in deception. I told Ashley I was falling apart, made my voice shake when she called, mentioned that I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop thinking about prison. My lawyer says the evidence is strong, I said during one call, keeping my tone defeated. He's talking about a plea deal. Maybe that's for the best, honey. Her voice was warm with false comfort. Just get it over with. Do your time and we can start fresh when you get out. I wanted to laugh. Start fresh, as if she'd be waiting. You're probably right, I said instead. I just want this nightmare to end. While I played the broken man, I was quietly liquidating assets Ashley knew nothing about. My grandmother had left me a trust fund when she passed. $340,000 in an account that predated my marriage. Separate property under North Carolina law. Stock options from my previous employer that had matured quietly last year. Another $112,000. And the Bitcoin. Back in 2013, Tyler had convinced me to mine cryptocurrency as a joke. It'll either be worth millions or nothing, he'd said. Might as well see what happens. I'd accumulated about 40 coins before getting bored and forgetting about them. At current prices, those coins were worth $287,000. Total hidden assets, approximately $680,000. Enough to rebuild. Enough to fight. Patricia Walsh was still digging through Ashley's financial trail, finding new transfers every week. She'd developed a personal vendetta against my wife's bookkeeping. "She's not even being careful anymore," Patricia said during one of our meetings. "Look at this. She transferred $20,000 to Ashford's company last week, labeled as a marketing consultation fee. There's no paper trail, no invoice, no evidence any work was performed." "She thinks she's already won," William said. "People get sloppy when they think they've won." He was right. Ashley was getting careless. She'd stopped bothering with excuses for her absences, barely maintained the pretense of being concerned about my case. And then she made her biggest mistake. North Carolina is a one-party consent state for recordings. That meant I could legally record any conversation I was part of without informing the other party. I installed a voice-activated recorder in my home office, hidden in a hollowed-out book on the shelf behind my desk. It was my house, my office, my property, completely legal. Then I staged a breakdown. I called Ashley, let my voice crack, told her I was terrified. "I think I'm going to take the plea deal. My lawyer says I'll probably get 3 to 5 years, maybe less with good behavior." "That's probably smart, Brandon." She sounded distracted. "I'm sorry, honey. I know this is hard. Can you come over tomorrow? I need to see you. I don't think I can handle being alone right now." She agreed, probably figuring it was a small price to pay for a few more weeks of patience. The next afternoon, Ashley arrived at the house. I met her at the door, made sure she saw my red-rimmed eyes and unshaven face. "I'm going to lie down for a while," I told her. "The anxiety medication makes me drowsy. Make yourself at home." I went upstairs to the bedroom, and I waited. 20 minutes later, I heard her voice drifting up from my home office. She was on the phone, with Daniel, I assumed. She thought I was unconscious from medication. She felt safe. I crept halfway down the stairs, close enough to hear but not be seen, and I listened to my wife seal her own fate. "No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's practically catatonic." She laughed, a bright, careless sound that cut through me like glass. "He actually thinks I'm going to wait for him. 3 to 5 years, can you imagine? I filed the divorce papers yesterday. By the time he gets out, there won't be a penny left." A pause while Daniel spoke. "Yes, I know Victor wants his cut. Tell him he'll get it once I have access to Brandon's retirement accounts. There's almost $2 million just sitting there." Another laugh. "This was so easy, Danny. I told you it would be." I stood on those stairs, barely breathing, listening to the woman I'd loved for 11 years discuss my destruction like she was planning a dinner party. Daniel's voice came through faintly. The phone must have been on speaker. "Victor did us a solid favor with those packages. We need to make sure he gets paid." "He will. Once everything's finalized, I'll wire him his $50,000. Small price for making our whole future possible." "What about Brandon's family? His friends? Nobody's going to stand by him once the conviction goes through?" Ashley laughed again. That bright, careless sound that used to make me smile. Now it made my skin crawl. "Tyler posted his bail, but he'll move on once Brandon goes to prison. Nobody wants to be associated with a convicted drug dealer. And Brandon's parents are dead. No siblings. He's got nobody except me, and I'll be gone too." You think the judge will give him the full sentence? 3 to 5 years minimum for trafficking. Maybe more if the prosecutor's aggressive. Either way, by the time he gets out, I'll have everything and he'll have nothing. He'll probably be too broken to even fight it. You're sure about the divorce timing? Already filed. I'll finalize while he's waiting for trial, claim abandonment and emotional distress. North Carolina judges aren't kind to felons in asset division. I've talked to 3 different lawyers. They all say the same thing. He's going to lose everything. And if someone figures out what really happened? A pause. Then Ashley's voice, colder than I'd ever heard it. Nobody's going to figure it out. Brandon's not smart enough to see through this. He actually believes I love him. After 11 years, he still believes it. That's the saddest part. They talked for another 10 minutes. About the house they'd buy once Daniel's legal problems were resolved. About the trips they'd take. Europe, the Caribbean, wherever his lawsuits couldn't find them. About how Brandon, that sad, pathetic Brandon, would be trading his tailored suits for prison uniforms while they lived off his money. When Ashley finally hung up and came to check on me, I was in bed with my eyes closed, breathing slow and even. She stood in the doorway for a moment, watching me sleep, and then went back downstairs. "Get better, honey," she murmured, so quietly I almost didn't hear. Then she went back downstairs. I heard the front door close a few minutes later. When I was sure she was gone, I retrieved the recorder from my office and played the conversation back. Every word, crystal clear. Every damning admission, preserved in digital audio. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. 11 years. 11 years of thinking I had a partner, and all that time she'd been waiting for the right moment to destroy me. I called William Park. "I have it," I said. "Everything." She recorded herself confessing. "You sound calm," he said. "I'm not calm. I'm furious. But I'm going to channel that fury into something productive." "Good. Bring me the recording. Let's end this." The district attorney's office occupied the top floor of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. William and I sat across from DA Catherine Reyes, a formidable woman in her late 40s who'd built her career on high-profile convictions. She was not happy. "You're telling me we almost prosecuted an innocent man for drug trafficking because his wife framed him?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you." William slid the recorder across her desk. "The recording includes admissions of conspiracy to plant evidence, conspiracy to commit fraud, and references to Victor Ashford's involvement in obtaining the drugs." Catherine listened to the recording twice. By the end, her expression had shifted from skepticism to barely contained fury. "This is a mess," she said. "The department's going to look like fools." "With respect," William replied, "the department was deceived by a sophisticated conspiracy. The question now is what you're going to do about it." Catherine leaned back in her chair. "The recording is damning, but it's not enough by itself. Defense attorneys will argue it's out of context, that we can't prove what packages means, that Ashley's comments about the divorce are protected speech. What do you need? Corroboration, independent witnesses, physical evidence." She paused. "We need Victor Ashford to flip." William smiled. "Then let's make that happen." The DEA raided Victor Ashford's apartment 6 days later. It wasn't connected to my case, officially. An anonymous tip about drug activity at his address. When agents kicked in his door at 6 in the morning, they found 3 kilograms of cocaine hidden in his closet. The same cartel-grade product that had been planted in my briefcase. Victor was facing his 3rd strike. Under federal sentencing guidelines, that meant life in prison without the possibility of parole. He flipped in 72 hours. William called me with the news. Victor gave up everything. He says Daniel approached him 4 months ago with a plan. "Ashley provided your schedule, the specifications for your briefcase, and $15,000 cash. They practiced planting the drugs twice before the actual day." Practiced? They wanted to make sure they could do it quickly without being seen. Victor says he's the one who installed the false compartment in your briefcase while Ashley distracted you at a dinner party. I remembered that party. One of Daniel's investors had thrown it, supposedly. Ashley had insisted we attend, had spent the whole evening pulling me from conversation to conversation while my briefcase sat unattended in the coat room. There's something else, William continued. Victor claims Daniel and Ashley discussed a backup plan if the drug charges didn't stick. Daniel mentioned knowing someone who could make you disappear during the trial. My blood went cold. You mean, there's no evidence it was serious, and Victor can't corroborate that they actually pursued it? But it's in his statement. It's on the record. I hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long time, thinking about the woman I'd shared a bed with for 11 years, the woman who'd considered having me killed as a contingency plan. The next phase required me to keep playing the victim. My charges had been quietly dismissed, but the dismissal was sealed. As far as Ashley knew, I was still facing trial, still considering a plea deal, still falling apart. I need you to sign some documents, she said during one of her increasingly rare visits. Power of attorney for your accounts. Just in case. You know, if you end up serving time. Someone needs to manage your assets. Of course. I kept my voice flat, defeated. Whatever makes this easier. She showed up 3 days later with a stack of papers and a notary, a nervous young man from Daniel's lawyer's office who wouldn't meet my eyes. Just sign where I've marked, Ashley said, handing me a pen. I looked at the documents. Power of attorney, giving her full control of my retirement accounts, my brokerage accounts, our joint savings, everything I'd built over 15 years of careful investment. I signed. Ashley's smile was radiant. Thank you, honey. This is the right decision. Within 48 hours, she'd transferred $840,000 out of my accounts. Wire transfers to Daniel's company, to her LLC, to offshore accounts in the Caymans. The FBI was watching every transaction. They arrested Ashley and Daniel at his condo during what the subsequent police report described as a celebration dinner. I wasn't there for the arrest. The FBI thought it was better if I stayed away, but Tyler had a contact who gave him the details later. Ashley answered the door in a silk dress, champagne glass in hand. Daniel was behind her in a tailored shirt, looking every inch the successful developer instead of the desperate con man he actually was. Ashley Cole, Daniel Ashford, you're under arrest. The charges were extensive. Conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, Class C felony. Conspiracy to commit fraud, Class H felony. Wire fraud, federal, carrying up to 20 years. Money laundering, federal, also up to 20 years. The backup plan comment from Victor's testimony triggered an additional charge, conspiracy to commit assault. It was later dropped for lack of evidence, but not before it appeared in every news story about the case. I watched the coverage from my living room, alone, a glass of bourbon in my hand. Ashley's mugshot showed a woman who looked nothing like the confident schemer who'd laughed about destroying me. Her mascara was smeared, her expression confused and frightened. Good. The story went viral within a week. Wife frames. Husband for drug trafficking to steal his fortune. That was the headline that took off, shared across social media until it had millions of views. News trucks parked outside the courthouse. Legal analysts dissected the case on cable television. I gave exactly one interview. A journalist from the Charlotte Observer had been following the story since the beginning, and I trusted her to tell it straight. "How do you feel about what your wife did?" she asked. I thought about the question for a long moment. I trusted her with my life. She tried to take it. Not through violence, through something worse. She tried to erase me, turn me into a convicted felon, a cautionary tale, a man who lost everything. She wanted to steal not just my money, but my reputation, my freedom, my future. Are you angry? I'm beyond angry. Anger suggests I still care about her opinion, her explanation, her justification. I don't. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with them. The interview ran as a feature piece, 3,000 words with photographs. By the time it published, Ashley's Instagram account, 40,000 followers from her lifestyle influencer side hustle, had become a wasteland of hate comments. She deleted it within hours. Her family disowned her publicly. Old Charlotte money, reputation obsessed, horrified by the scandal. Her mother gave a statement to the press. Ashley made her own choices. She is no longer welcome in our home. Daniel's real estate company collapsed overnight. Investors fled, projects stalled, lawsuits multiplied. The man who'd charmed his way through years of shady deals finally ran out of road. And then Rebecca Tate came forward. She'd dated Daniel 3 years before Ashley. During their relationship, Daniel had tried the same scheme, targeting her accounts, manipulating her finances, setting up what she now realized was a long-term con. She'd caught him before he could execute the plan, but she had texts, emails, evidence that this was his pattern. The prosecution added criminal enterprise enhancements to the charges. Daniel Ashford took a plea deal 6 weeks before trial. 12 years federal prison, no possibility of parole. His lawyer had apparently convinced him that going to trial would only make things worse. The evidence was overwhelming, the witness testimony damning, the public sentiment against him. Ashley refused to plead. She hired an expensive defense attorney named Harrison Webb, a silver-tongued courtroom veteran who specialized in sympathetic defendants. His strategy was predictable. Portray Ashley as a victim of Daniel's manipulation, a woman who'd been seduced and controlled by a predatory man. My client was lonely, Webb intoned during his opening statement, walking slowly before the jury box. Her husband worked 70-hour weeks, traveled constantly, and when he was home, his mind was always somewhere else, on spreadsheets, on projections, on everything except the woman who needed him. I sat in the gallery and watched him spin his story. Watched the jurors' faces to see if any of them were buying it. Daniel Ashford was a predator. He identified a vulnerable woman and exploited her. Every step of this alleged conspiracy was planned by Mr. Ashford. My client was merely a puppet, manipulated by a man who has now admitted his guilt and is serving a federal sentence. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Tyler, watching the woman I'd married try to convince a jury that she was the real victim. The prosecution, led by Assistant DA Margaret Francis, methodically demolished Ashley's defense. They called Patricia Walsh to testify about the financial records, the LLC, the transfers, the embezzlement that started months before Ashley ever claimed to have met Daniel. You're saying Mrs. Cole opened this consulting company 6 months before the arrest? Margaret asked. That's correct. The LLC was registered in February. She began transferring money from the couple's joint accounts in March. And what was happening in February and March, according to Mrs. Cole's own timeline? According to her testimony, she hadn't yet begun her relationship with Daniel Ashford. She claims that started in April. So she was setting up the financial infrastructure for this scheme before she even supposedly met the man who was allegedly controlling her? Harrison Webb objected. The judge overruled. They called Victor Ashford via video link from federal prison, where he was serving reduced time for his cooperation. He described the meetings, the payments, the practice runs. He described Ashley handing him $15,000 in cash in a parking garage. She seemed real calm about it, Victor said. Like she'd done this kind of thing before. She had a list on her phone. Her husband's schedule, his habits, what time he got to work, when he took lunch. She knew everything about this guy. Did she seem manipulated or coerced? Victor actually laughed. Man, no. She was the one giving orders. Danny was the one asking questions, but she was the one with the answers. She knew exactly what she wanted. And then the prosecution played the recording. The whole courtroom heard Ashley laughing about how easy it had been. They heard her mocking me, that sad, pathetic Brandon, while planning her future with my money. They heard her casually discussing payments to Victor Ashford for the cocaine that would send me to prison. The recording lasted almost 12 minutes. 12 minutes of Ashley at her most honest, her most unguarded, her most damning. When it ended, the courtroom was silent. I looked at the jury box. One woman, middle-aged, wedding ring visible, was staring at Ashley with an expression of pure contempt. A man in the back row was shaking his head slowly. Harrison Webb tried to recover during cross-examination. He suggested the recording had been edited, that context was missing, that my breakdown had been staged to entrap his client. Margaret Francis objected. The recording's authenticity had already been verified by 3 independent experts. Webb tried again. Isn't it possible my client was simply venting frustration? That these words were taken out of context? She described paying Victor Ashford for drugs, Margaret replied coolly. She described timing the anonymous tip to coincide with her husband's arrival at work. She described filing for divorce while he was still expecting her support. What context makes any of that innocent? The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Sentencing was 2 weeks later. Judge Catherine Bishop presided, a stern woman in her 60s known for harsh sentences against white-collar criminals. Ashley stood before the bench in a modest dress, her attorney beside her. She'd lost weight since the arrest, and not in the healthy way she'd been losing it before. She looked hollowed out. Mrs. Cole, Judge Bishop began, I've presided over many fraud cases in my career. Financial crimes, embezzlement, theft. But I've never seen anything quite like this. Ashley's lawyer tried to interject. Your Honor, my client. I wasn't finished. Judge Bishop's voice was ice. You didn't just betray your husband, Mrs. Cole. You weaponized the justice system against an innocent man. You planted evidence. You filed false reports. You conspired to send someone to prison for a crime he didn't commit. Not because you hated him, not because he'd wronged you, but because you wanted his money. She shuffled papers on her bench. You wasted law enforcement resources. You corrupted the integrity of the courts. You planned this scheme for months with the deliberate intention of destroying another human being's life. Ashley had started crying. Tears streaming down her face, shoulders shaking. I watched her without feeling anything at all. This court has no sympathy, Judge Bishop continued. You showed none to your husband, and you'll receive none from me. She delivered the sentence. 8 years federal prison for the conspiracy and wire fraud charges. 4 years state for the drug conspiracy, to be served concurrently. Ashley collapsed into her attorney's arms. The bailiff moved forward to take her into custody. As they led her out, she looked at me for the first time since the trial began. I don't know what she expected to see. Anger, satisfaction, maybe a flicker of the love that used to exist between us. I gave her nothing. Just watched her go, like a stranger passing on the street. The divorce was finalized 47 days later. Ashley signed the papers from federal prison without contesting a single provision. There was nothing left to fight for. The assets she'd tried to steal had been recovered, most of them anyway. The FBI had traced the wire transfers and frozen the accounts. Patricia Walsh worked with federal investigators to unwind the whole fraudulent structure. In the end, I recovered approximately $1.1 million. Some was unrecoverable, money that had already been spent, investments that had failed, assets that had disappeared into the system. I tried not to think about it. Tyler came with me to sign the final papers. How do you feel? He asked as we walked out of the attorney's office. I don't know yet. Ask me in a year. I sold the house a month later. I couldn't live there anymore. Couldn't sleep in the bedroom where Ashley had pretended to comfort me. Couldn't work in the office where she'd laughed about my destruction. Every room held memories I didn't want anymore. The buyers were a young couple, newly married, excited about their first home. I didn't tell them about the history. Some things don't need to be passed down. My company offered me my old job back. Richard Vaughn called personally, apologetic, and embarrassed in equal measure. The board feels terrible about what happened, he said. We'd like to offer you your position back, plus a promotion to senior vice president, and a public apology if you'll accept it. I thought about it for 3 days. Thank you, I finally told him, but I'm moving in a different direction. I used my recovered assets to start my own firm. Financial consulting for small businesses, the kind of careful, detailed work I'd always been good at. I rented an office downtown, hired 2 analysts, and started building something that was entirely mine. Tyler tried to refuse the money. I don't need payment for doing the right thing, he said when I handed him the check. $100,000, a fraction of what his loyalty had been worth, but all I could properly express. You posted my bail with your retirement fund, I reminded him. You spent weeks tracking Ashley's movements. You used every contact you had to help build the case against her. You would have done the same for me. Probably, but you actually did it. Take the money, Tyler. He looked at the check for a long moment. You sure? I'm sure. Buy that boat you've been talking about for years. Or invest it, save it, burn it. I don't care. But take it. He took it. 6 months later, we met for drinks at a bar near my new office. Tyler had indeed bought a boat, a modest fishing vessel he kept at a marina on Lake Norman. You look good, he said, studying me over his bourbon. Better than I expected. I am good, or getting there anyway. The company doing well? 3 major clients in the first quarter. Apparently, the guy who caught his wife trying to frame him is a good marketing hook. People trust me. Tyler laughed. Silver linings. Something like that. We drank in comfortable silence for a while. The bar was quiet. A Tuesday evening, most people still at work or heading home. On the television above the bar, the news was running stories I didn't care about. You dating anyone? Tyler asked. Casually, nothing serious. Being careful? Very. I finished my drink. I don't think I'll ever trust anyone the way I trusted Ashley. That's probably healthy, honestly. Nobody should trust that completely. Tyler nodded. He'd been divorced himself years ago, though for normal reasons, drifting apart, wanting different things. Not conspiracy and cocaine. So what now? He asked. Now I keep building, keep working, keep moving forward. I signaled the bartender for another round. I spent 6 months fighting to survive. Now I get to focus on actually living. The bartender brought our drinks. Behind him, the television switched to a news story, something about prisoner transfers at a federal facility. I wasn't paying attention until I heard the name. Daniel Ashford. I looked up at the screen. They were showing footage of federal marshals moving prisoners between facilities. The camera panned across a group of inmates in orange jumpsuits. And then I saw him. Not Daniel. I spotted Daniel easily enough, shuffling in line with the other prisoners, looking diminished and gray. No, the man who caught my attention was standing in the background, outside the security perimeter. He was watching the transfer with unusual focus, his eyes tracking Daniel's movement. Victor Ashford. Released 2 months ago for his cooperation with the prosecution. The same Victor Ashford who'd been promised $50,000 for his role in the scheme. Money that Ashley and Daniel never paid. The camera cut away to other footage, and Victor's face disappeared from the screen. Everything okay? Tyler asked. I looked at my friend. At the bar. At the normal evening unfolding around me. Yeah, I said. Just saw someone I recognized. I didn't mention Victor. Didn't mention the look on his face as he watched Daniel being moved. There was nothing to be done about it anyway. Whatever Victor was planning, it was between him and the people who'd betrayed him. Some debts have a way of collecting themselves. I finished my drink, left a good tip, and walked out into the evening air. 3 weeks later, I got a letter. The envelope was plain white, postmarked from the federal women's prison in West Virginia. No return name, but I didn't need one. I recognized Ashley's handwriting on the address. I stood at my kitchen counter, holding the envelope, feeling its weight. Whatever was inside, it was substantial. Multiple pages from the thickness. An explanation, probably. A justification. Maybe an apology, though I doubted Ashley was capable of genuine remorse for anything except getting caught. I thought about opening it. About reading whatever version of events she'd constructed to make herself the victim. About engaging, even passively, with the woman who'd tried to destroy me. I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds. Then I found a pen and wrote 2 words on the outside of the envelope. No contact. I dropped it in the outgoing mail the next morning. Let her wonder if I'd read it. Let her wonder if her words had any impact at all. The answer would be the same either way. She was my past. I was done carrying her. The Saturday after the letter, Tyler and I took his new boat out on Lake Norman. It was one of those perfect Carolina autumn days. Sky so blue it hurt to look at. Air crisp without being cold. Leaves just starting to turn gold at the edges. We anchored in a quiet cove and broke out sandwiches from the cooler. "I've been meaning to ask you something," Tyler said between bites. "That night in the jail, when you called me about the bail, were you scared?" I considered the question. Not of prison. I was scared of what I didn't understand. Scared that my whole life had suddenly stopped making sense. And now? Now things make sense again. Different sense, but sense. I watched a heron glide across the water. I spent 11 years building a life with someone who was planning to steal it. That's not my failure, it's hers. I just had to figure that out. Tyler nodded slowly. You know, when I posted that bail, I wasn't sure you'd make it through. You looked broken. I was broken. But broken things can be rebuilt. Sometimes they come back stronger. That's very fortune cookie of you. I threw a piece of bread at his head. He ducked, laughing. We spent the rest of the afternoon on the water, talking about everything and nothing. Work gossip, sports predictions, a mutual friend who'd recently gotten engaged. Normal conversation, the kind I'd almost forgotten existed during those months of investigation and trial. As the sun started to sink toward the tree line, Tyler steered us back toward the marina. The boat rocked gently on the wake of a passing vessel. "You happy?" he asked. I thought about the question. Really thought about it. "Not about what happened," I said finally. "I don't think I'll ever be happy about what happened. You don't recover from that kind of betrayal. You just learn to carry it differently. But I'm free. I have work I care about, friends I trust, a future that belongs to me." I watched the marina coming into view, boats lined up in their slips like cars in a parking lot. Ashley's sitting in a federal prison cell right now, probably still convinced she was the real victim. Daniel's starting a 12-year sentence, and I'm here, on a lake, with my best friend, complaining about the sandwich selection. "Hey, my wife made those sandwiches." "Your wife makes terrible sandwiches. I love her anyway." Tyler grinned. "Fair enough." We docked the boat as the last light was fading. The marina was quiet. Most of the other boaters already gone for the evening. Somewhere across the water, a radio was playing country music. "Same time next month?" Tyler asked as we walked to our cars. "Absolutely." We shook hands. Then, on impulse, I pulled him into a hug. A quick one, the kind men do when they're not used to physical affection but mean it anyway. "Thank you," I said. For everything. For never doubting me. Please, doubt you? Tyler stepped back, pretending to be offended. I've known you 15 years. You're not interesting enough to be a drug trafficker. I laughed. Really laughed. For what felt like the first time in months. I'm going to take that as a compliment. You should? It was intended as one. We got into our separate cars and drove away from the marina. I took the long route home, windows down, radio playing, letting the cool air wash over me. Ashley had tried to take everything from me. My freedom, my money, my reputation, my future. She'd come within a hair's breadth of succeeding. Instead, she'd lost everything she had. I didn't feel triumphant about that. Didn't feel vindicated or satisfied or any of the clean emotions that revenge stories promise. Mostly I felt tired and sad and ready to stop thinking about it. So I did. I turned up the radio, focused on the road ahead, and drove toward whatever came next. 1 month later, my company signed its fourth major client, a regional manufacturing firm looking to restructure their investment portfolio. The CEO, a practical woman named Sandra Whitmore, had read about my case and specifically sought me out. I figure if you can survive that kind of attack and come out fighting, you can handle anything we throw at you, she said during our introductory meeting. I appreciate the confidence. Plus, I like hiring people who've been underestimated. They work harder. She wasn't wrong. The business grew steadily through that first year. I hired 3 more analysts, moved to a larger office, started building a reputation independent of the scandal that had launched me. Some clients came because of the notoriety. Most came because of the work. I dated occasionally. Nothing serious. Nothing that demanded more than I was ready to give. A lawyer I met at a networking event. A woman from the gym who shared my taste in terrible action movies. Brief connections, pleasant enough, carefully bounded. You're going to have to let someone in eventually, Tyler told me once. Maybe, but not yet. And not without a prenup, extensive background checks, and probably a private investigator on retainer. That's dark. That's realistic. I trusted completely once. It almost destroyed me. Tyler didn't argue. He'd seen what trust without verification could cost. I heard about Daniel Ashford's death 2 months after that boat trip with Tyler. It was a small story, buried in the crime section of the local news. Inmate killed in prison altercation. Investigation ongoing. No suspects named. I read the article twice, then closed my laptop. Victor Ashford was never charged with anything. There was no evidence connecting him to Daniel's death, and the prison surveillance footage was conveniently corrupted. These things happen in federal facilities. Equipment failures, bureaucratic oversights. I thought about calling William Park to discuss it. Thought about asking Tyler if his law enforcement contacts knew anything more than the news was reporting. Instead, I poured myself a bourbon and sat on my porch, watching the sun set over the Charlotte skyline. Daniel Ashford had conspired to frame me for a felony. He'd helped plant evidence that would have sent me to prison for years. He'd discussed, however casually, having me killed if the initial plan didn't work. And he'd stiffed his cousin out of $50,000. Some debts collect themselves. I'd known that the night I saw Victor's face on the television screen, watching Daniel's prison transfer with that focused intensity. I didn't feel guilty about not warning anyone. Didn't feel responsible for what Victor had done or might have done. Daniel had made his choices, about Ashley, about me, about his cousin. Those choices had consequences. I finished my bourbon, went inside, and never thought about Daniel Ashford again. Ashley's sister, her actual brother's wife, whom Ashley had never been close to, contacted me the following spring. She's asking for a compassionate release, the sister-in-law said over the phone. Some kind of medical situation. The family was wondering if you'd be willing to write a letter. A letter supporting her release? She says she's changed. Says she understands what she did wrong. I thought about the recording. about Ashley's laugh while she described destroying my life, about the 11 years of what I'd thought was a partnership, but was apparently just a long con waiting for the right opportunity. No, I said. Could you at least think about? I've thought about it. The answer is no. And please don't contact me about her again. I hung up before she could respond. Ashley served her full 8 years. I know because Tyler tracked her release date, concerned she might try to contact me again. She didn't, at least not directly. She'd been required to attend classes in prison about respecting boundaries and understanding the impact of her crimes. Apparently, something had finally sunk in. I saw her picture once, in a social media post from someone we'd both known years ago. She looked old. Not just aged, old in the way people look when something essential has been worn away from them. The confident woman who'd laughed about my destruction was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize. I didn't feel sorry for her. Didn't feel satisfied either. Just saw her, acknowledged that she existed somewhere in the world, and moved on with my day. Tyler and I still take that boat out on Lake Norman. Every month or so, weather permitting, we anchor in our usual cove and spend an afternoon talking about nothing important. His kids are getting older. The oldest just started college. His wife has taken up pottery, which produces either beautiful artwork or amusing disasters depending on the week. My company has 16 employees now. We moved to a bigger office last year, with a view of the city's skyline and a conference room that doesn't echo when I present to clients. I'm seeing someone. Her name is Joanna. She teaches middle school science and she knows my whole history. The arrest, the trial, the wife who tried to frame me. She listened to the entire story on our third date, asked a few pointed questions, then said, "Well, that explains why you insisted on separate checks." Is that a problem? It's understandable. I'll let you know when it becomes a problem. It hasn't become a problem yet. Maybe it never will. Maybe I'll spend the rest of my life keeping one eye on the exits and one hand on my assets. There are worse ways to live. The point is, I'm living. 11 years ago, I stood in a conference room while federal agents cuffed me in front of my colleagues. I watched my professional life collapse. I learned that the woman I loved was planning my destruction with the same care I'd applied to my quarterly projections. And I survived. More than survived. I won. Not through violence, not through rage, not through any of the dramatic confrontations that revenge fantasies promise. I won through patience, through planning, through trusting the right people and documenting the right evidence. I won by letting Ashley and Daniel destroy themselves, by stepping back and watching their own greed and carelessness bring them down. There's no movie ending to my story. No moment where I stood over Ashley's defeated form and delivered a crushing final speech. Just a quiet divorce, a quieter life, and the knowledge that I outlasted someone who tried to erase me from my own existence. Tyler asked me once if I was happy. I still don't know how to answer that question. Happy feels too simple for what I feel. I'm at peace, maybe. I'm free. I'm building something new with my own hands, living a life that nobody can steal from me because I've learned to protect what matters. And Ashley? Ashley's a cautionary tale now. A story lawyers tell their clients about schemes that backfire. A lesson in what happens when you underestimate someone enough to laugh about destroying them while they listen from the next room. She tried to take everything from me. She lost everything instead.